of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Governor's variance. What we got going there?
You want me to speak?
Lori.
Okay, so as we look at the governor's, guidance for counties with less than 75,000 people, but have some COVID-19 activity, we can become eligible for that moving into that phase 2. Once we demonstrate adequate local hospital bed capacity and adequate PPE supplies and a few other things. Although I think we're moving in the right direction. So I did go ahead and get letters from the as we look at the COVID-19 county variance plan. Have you seen that from Secretary Weisman? Okay. So we are working on the application, and I have obtained letters from North Valley, Three Rivers, from the Dallas Wise, and Mid Valley Hospital. That's one of those steps that we have to demonstrate. I would encourage the commissioners to, so then what the process is, we'll bring this up tomorrow at the Board of Health meeting. The health officers off on moving the plan forward. Then the local Board of Health will pass a resolution which we are preparing. And then we've got the hospital letters. The county commissioners will then have to pass a resolution supporting that. And then I will submit those documents to the Secretary of Health. And see if we can't, I'm not sure how long that variance process is. I know that Kittitas got theirs rejected or put on hold this weekend or Friday because they have an outbreak. 34 people tested positive in their frozen food plants. And so even though we received 2 more positives yesterday, and we have the 2 on Friday. The concerning thing about those is they could affect the healthcare situation, but we hope not. So if we can keep, so like I mentioned, even if we have some cases, we still may get eligibility for that variance. As you know, public health would like to reopen safely. Businesses have been suffering a long time. We know that there's plans in place for a lot of businesses who could do that safely. And so we're hoping that we can move this into the variance process for phase 2.
Good.
Any questions?
So when is our health officer ready to?
He'll be here tomorrow.
Is he ready to sign off on variance?
I'm not sure yet. We've talked a lot about that. We have to, so we've had several new cases. We're trying to say that those aren't outbreak related. You know what I mean? They're very isolated examples, we hope. As we look at investigating those today, I think we can still move the process along. We've prepared some graphs and things to show to the Board of Health on this and what our data looks like. And so then we would have to get Dr. McCarthy on board with that to sign off. And based on his recommendations, I'm assuming the Board of Health would move things forward. And then we already have the hospitals letters, all three hospitals. I think it would be good to get the tribal, council to help support that. I know with Kitatat, they have Central Washington University on board, and things like that. We do have a quarantine and isolation plan if we had to enact the, isolation, facility. Right now, most people are isolating in their own homes that are positive. Those that are quarantined are awaiting results. And so, right now, they're able to do that in their own home. We also ask if they have resources that, when you isolate a family, obviously you don't want people going out to the stores, those sorts of things. So we ask, do you have a support system in place that can drop off things like groceries and stuff like that? We have a facility plan that we've been working on since this began. We have to have that documentation submitted along with it as far as how we go about doing contact tracing and, that sort of thing. So we have, volunteers, they're all medical professionals that are signed on to help us with that if needs be.
Can I ask you something about the contact tracing?
Sure.
Because there's been a lot of stuff out there, obviously, with people being really adamantly opposed to contact tracing. So I guess I don't really know all that it entails.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if somebody turns up positive, let's say, do you ask them, like, where have you been? Or do you ask them specifically who they've been in contact with?
So we look at the entire household first. So if you test positive, your whole household's been affected.
Mm-hmm.
It could be really difficult for you to isolate in one end of the house and not have contact and spread that to your family members. So we ask immediately, who's in your house? Where do you work? Do you work at a hospital? Do you work at Sun Opta? Do you work at wherever? And who have you been in close contact with during that infection period? Yeah, because those people, we usually have the person contact, their immediate, contact, and let them know that we may be contacting them, to see if, they have any signs or symptoms where they might need testing, that sort of thing. Because all of our clinics, Confluence Family Health Centers, Mid Valley, North Valley, and Three Rivers, they have clinics that are tested throughout the county. So, but we look at, is this a person that works at Walmart? Is this a person that went to Walmart that was coughing? And that sort of thing. So, right now, we don't have the sophistication of, there's only 3 of us doing this in the office right now. And so far with our 20-some-odd cases, along with the tribes they have stepped up, and if we would have had to do contact tracing in the Nisquelam area, oh my goodness, it would have taken 3 or 4 more other, people, but they have the relationship and connection.
So they are active in both tracking and...
Yes, we are collaborating
Excellent.
together.
That's good to hear. I was kind of wondering. Okay. The other part in the variance is, so I know we're talking about the tracking and all that stuff, but what element of enforcement then does that come with?
As far as...
Well, we're convincing the governor, and I have this conversation with their staff, we can do this, right? And so I have to say that I also want to be fairly confident when I'm saying that and arguing that, very emotionally, by the way, that we actually are in a position where we can...
Unfortunately, the only thing we have right now is our health officer does have the authority to find people who aren't isolating. We have never used that, but he does have that legal authority.
I'm not done yet, though.
Oh.
So, in my questioning, the other part then is that I'm a bit adverse to the hardcore enforcement because what it leads to.
Right.
And so secondly then, if health or other resources in the community were to be able to deactivate it to help people realize what risk there is involved in running their business a certain way, those kinds of things. If there's something that we have in place, and if health has the capacity to do that, and if they don't, I'm arguing for that too, by the way.
Oh, no, absolutely. Public health isn't the watchdog on businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We are the advisors on how you can reopen safely.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully people, citizens, or business owners respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And will, obviously, time will tell if they're not conducting safe practices, they're gonna lose business. I mean, there's, yeah.
Yeah, we know that, and we're like I say, it turns into a fairly emotional argument about them, especially small businesses where there's a disparity there. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
But I want to be real about it too. Yeah.
So public health isn't the bad guy. First of all, we are the ones that are trying to get businesses reopened in a safe manner. What the phasing is, I think it's guidance. But when we look at how businesses can open safely, I think there's a whole heck of a lot that can. If they will do that.
Right.
I mean, there's no way that you don't have the capacity if you're a small business owner to social distance or to have disinfection.
We probably have an easier time.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
exactly.
Larger.
We totally get that.
Yeah.
And we on our calls as regional and even local health have been saying, look, this mom and pop organization that is just a 2-person operation who gets so few customers in a day, or, there's no reason why they can't open effectively and safely.
I was just thinking about it. Any business that I have, right, that's non-essential is closed. But let's say that my business license said, oh, you repair bicycles also. I have the same footprint building, but people can come in because I'm an essential business. Just because I repair bicycles.
I think that argument's been made a lot, and I don't think there's any question about it. I think the thing is that how do we get there?
Yeah.
That is what's frustrating me, is
what
that we're arguing all day these cases about each little business, but the fact is that we need a way to get there.
What
And
Oakland
I
County
think,
needs
isn't that what
to
you're
do,
proposing?
Yeah, but we got to make sure that we.
county needs to do is show that we can open safely. And I think we can. I think we can move into phase 2 safely. If we receive commitments from people going, you know what, I'm going to open safely. I'm not going to risk exposing my mother, my grandmother. You know what I mean? I think we can do that. I don't see why we couldn't. I think we could call on the citizens of Okanagan County and those business owners to put forward plans. You know what? I'm going to have a bottle of sanitizer. I'm going to disinfect in between each customer, whether it's a barber shop or whether it's a small business. I think we can do it effectively.
So that's what we're looking for, to send the message to the governor's office, and the message goes beyond that, by the way. The variance criteria is a bit onerous, and it makes it very, very difficult, and that's what most of the county commissioners from around the state were saying to them Friday night. But it always goes around in a circle.
But see, I don't view it that way. I think we're already compiling our documentation to show that we can do this
Okay.
effectively.
Okay.
And so, once we get the criteria completed, those steps, it's a simple matter of me submitting that to the Secretary of Health and making that case for why Okanagan County can do this effectively. And one of our things is already, we're socially isolated as this. I mean, to only have as few cases as we had, I think we can demonstrate that we've done an excellent job of informing the public. Owners, business owners, while not so thrilled, obviously, because they're losing their short, have not been in business. And so our cases could have been 3-4 times what they are, and they haven't been. And so I think that we can make that case that we can prove ourselves once again.
I got a question on the isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's another big thing that people are really opposed to, worried about, different things. And so isolation does not mean that you are in house arrest.
Heavens no.
Thing
We
like
would
that.
never use those words.
Right. If I'm isolating in.
Sorry. It's hard to get at that little switch.
If I'm isolating in my house where I live, I can walk down the road and not see anything,
Correct.
right? So
You might get spied on if you were stupid enough to get tested, and then somebody's going to turn you in.
But the thing is that there is no rationale for turning me in, because isolation is not necessarily in my house. Now, if I'm in an apartment building,
Correct.
that's a little bit different, right?
It is.
I mean, you gotta.
It is, because the whole idea is that as a citizen, you will agree to isolate yourself so that you don't infect other people.
Right.
And that is discharge instructions that you were given, whether you go to the emergency room or whether you go to your physician.
So if I felt like that, I could stay 20 feet away from people to go do something.
No. Isolation is you will stay home. You will stay put. If you need items, because that means you have that COVID-19 within your household. The last thing you want to do is spread that to your community.
No, I know that, but I'm not talking about going out in public.
You can go out and do yard work
Yeah.
as long as you're, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as leaving your house,
To go do things where you're going to public places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Larry, there was a piece of information that I sent you that's been passed around a bit, and I think it's probably pretty sound information that shares a bit about the details of how COVID is spread through droplets, and it emphasized how that works. And once you understand how that works, it's a little easier to understand why these various restrictions are in place. And it was one that said, obviously people aren't going to abide by the rules, and so here's how do you protect yourself. And it had some very detailed information about how it spread. If you can understand that, I think that you got half the battle won, because...
Well, so what I would put forth too is, and, talking to, say, for example, when my mom was little, in the 30s, and you had measles, polio, you had scarlet fever, public health would put a quarantine sign on your door. That meant you didn't come out. That meant people didn't go in. It was a civic and obligatory duty to protect others. What happened? I mean, look at FDR getting polio and being in a wheelchair the rest of his life because of a disease. When you look at what FDR went through, not only with the depression, can you even imagine? Yeah, we're in that situation today, but I have no doubt that people have lost their total sense of what it means to be a citizen, and it's not just about me. It's about protecting my parents, my grandparents, whoever I come in contact. I'm one of those over 60. The last thing I want is to get this, because we don't know how our bodies are gonna react. We don't know why we've had 2 30-somethings hospitalized with decreased lung capacity, still fighting that, and why other people are asymptomatic. We have no idea.
We have that?
Correct.
You know, County?
Correct. We had a person shipped to Central Washington Hospital this weekend. So we may not see all this stuff that we're seeing, but I'm appalled that some of whoever's created a side, that this is somehow taking sides, when we have a civic and citizen obligation to protect our communities. And so if we ask you to self-isolate, is that so impossible to do? Quarantine is different. Quarantine's when you've been tested and you stay home until you get your results. Because you don't want to infect a packing shed or a hospital or a clinic or any other group that you may work with.
Well, the way it's been handled so far, the people that call me are telling me, I am
let's see,
not
and,
getting
which
tested.
department you're with?
Absolutely.
And that's their choice.
That
They
is their
don't
choice.
have a right to
Well,
infect
and
other
handle
people.
is what's caused them.
I disagree with
Well,
you.
go
We
ahead.
have done nothing but above board following our guidance and
That's
our
correct.
policies.
Well, we got a governor that's acting like Nazi Germany, and I've had it up to here with that guy, I'll tell you what.
Well, I have to say that across this nation, governors are faced with the same thing, and I don't care who they are. I mean, you know, this is election year, and it's about the craziest damn thing I've ever seen because of the virus, because that's the craziest thing I've ever seen too.
Well, Chris, you don't realize, if you weren't here, but at the last
Appreciate the call.
campus board meeting, our auditor
Thank you.
told us she's preparing to do the primary and general under lockdown. Because the governor has said he wants to run this lockdown past the election.
Okay, that's something, I understand where you're coming from completely. It's real political, and that's fine with me. I'm going to put that aside right now, and I'm going to look at the realities of what we're having to deal with. So you either believe there's a pandemic that could take lives or not. And it kind of reminds me sometimes of things. If we don't have the people dying next to us, and they're older people, because it's not about us.
No, I understand.
It's about everybody else. And so it just reminds me that if there's not a name placed on that death, if there's not somebody in some family, you know, a friend of mine came back from Vietnam, and he was in a helicopter. And he said that he would meet these kids as they put them out into the field, and he would ask their name and where they were from. And he stopped doing that. Because when he came back and the body bags came in and he looked at their name, he felt real bad because he knew them. So he didn't want to know them. And so I look at it the same way. I go, if we don't know these people that are dying or their families or anything like that, it means much less to us. And so a lot of that's happening all over, and it's not happening as much here. That's why we have an argument for a variance. But I think that we've got to keep track of the fact that this is something that we've never seen before, and I don't know anybody. They're joking about it in some counties, and they're saying, it's too bad there's not somebody here that remembered the Spanish flu because they're all gone.
Right. But on the other hand, you know, this thing has been so politicized and so blown out.
I agree.
Because you have just as many common flu deaths a year as you do with this pandemic.
Not at the rate it's happening.
Yeah, okay, you've got 70,000
Not comparable.
deaths nationwide, but they kill 1 million babies a year with Planned Parenthood. Now, where in the world does the equality come in that?
I don't think that's all political, and I'm not even going to go there. I'm just not even going to go there.
Commissioners, we want to reopen Okanami County as safely as we can. We're not political, I'm sorry, I try not to be, but there's been this, for some reason, a line drawn in the sand, and I try not to get involved with that, but I hear it from both sides. Public health has been asked to advise. Unfortunately, the county has to go through public health to get this variance. We wanna work with the businesses in Okanagan County to make sure that we do that in a safe and effective manner. And so that's what we're talking about here. Politics aside, I'm not an elected official, I'm not a politician.
But I wanna ask you a question.
Yes,
The bulk of the calls that I got over this weekend from people were, is the governor bringing the National Guard into Okanagan County?
what indication would they have for that?
He, in one of those meetings, I didn't witness it, but they say they saw him in one of his presentations where he was gonna bring out the National Guard.
Why would they do that?
Because, so the context of the.
I didn't see it, so I'm, these guys that are
I
calling.
watched it.
Okay.
I watched what he said. The context of the address, I believe, was to help with contact tracing. I
we
think
have-
that
yeah.
is what, in listening to the piece, I believe that's what he was trying to get to. And it was, people were, they were definitely, not.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
the guys, the people are calling me, there's gonna be a riot.
His question is, we have no reason to have the National Guard in Okanagan County, right?
Right.
That is correct. Number one, they talked about, community activism for food. That's not happening. We squashed that. That was good. And contact tracing. How much of this is done? I guess that's Laura. It's done by phone. And so when they are doing that, you know what? That National Guard stuff, it's not gonna be here. Even if they did assist, more than likely it's gonna be
Over there.
Well, I'll tell you what, the people that are calling me, and I wish I'd have seen that to be able to, I'm sure that Commissioner Holder's got the right context, but they took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, they took it as, I think, what I was reading in the comments was they were taking it as martial law. And that they were going to use the National Guard to enforce the quarantine. Now, that is the inference that I got from the things that I was reading.
In
That
fact,
is not what I inferred from how he was talking, but in my opinion, it would have probably been better to not bring that up in the context that he was putting.
so do you remember the isolation when they designated, was it Questville? Where did they place those all?
Yeah.
Questville. They designated that as an isolation facility. They had it set up, ready to go for people who did not have a safe place to isolate. They've just taken that, disassembled that already. We have a facility, so for example, if we had a first responder who had been exposed, who didn't want to take it home to his wife and new baby, they could isolate somewhere else. Or quarantine somewhere else until their test came back. And then.
Isn't that why hotels being open and stuff like that, wouldn't that be,
Well, they have to be cleaned afterwards, though, in a certain, you want to not that hotels don't disinfect anyway, but you have to make sure.
so I'm sorry, I'm saying like if I wasn't positive, but I had this, I wanted to, something was going on where I needed to go get out of the house or something.
And we haven't denied anyone.
Yeah.
I just think that, as responsible elected officials, we need to work to make sure that those rumors are dealt with and not feed into them.
Correct.
And I agree that what you saw, because I don't think there was any intent to bring in martial law. And the fact is that's another message that, we're getting across to the governor's office. It's not like those staff haven't heard it before. they're as concerned as anybody else about what certain people generate out there in terms of communism and martial law and those things. I'm really getting quite tired of hearing about it, because this is something that we need to take the responsibility and deal with it and tell them what we know. And we have to do the best we can to get that information in our minds. And I don't call it brainwashing myself, as some people have been talking about that as well. A lot of the conspiracies that have been laid out there have been more than once challenged and proved wrong. And so we need to understand that. And if we can collectively say, this is very serious stuff, we can, in fact, open the county. We can make this disparity go away, but we have to have a commitment to do that. And we have to talk to people that are taking it way too extreme.
It's the moral basis for our whole democracy. Respect and responsibility. And if that's too much to ask people, I mean, come on, do the right thing instead of, it's all about me. You know, we do. We have a moral responsibility to set politics aside and recognize that, okay, while some may think this is just a bad flu, there's others that are losing family members because of it and are getting quite sick. So somewhere in the middle, we have to find some common ground.
I think that's right.
That's where we're at. I suggest that we're all on the same page about wanting to get our businesses opened as quickly and safely as possible. I don't think there's anybody in this room that would disagree with that. And so how can we do that as a group, a unified voice, instead of the partisan divide? I can't make it about that, because my job as public health is to keep the entire public safe. What does that look like? And how can we do that safely and effectively? That's all.
I think we have a better chance of going forward if we take that approach.
I would agree. I am more than willing to answer any questions. I can't do it from a partisan perspective because I'm not I'm not elected, and my opinion doesn't matter. I have to look at what's going on in Okanagan County and what we can do to make sure that we have Skeppers Farms that stays safe, that we have Sunopta that stays safe, that we have our county government and our hospitals and our small businesses that stay safe.
I think something that Jim brings up, and I agree with you. It's this whole thing about one size fits all. We talk about it all the time, And this is one of those cases that one size, from the state perspective, fits all doesn't fit very well at all.
No.
And so we just got to make sure that message is there, and if there's a fight, the fight should be to understand that. Because I even heard on the call I was on Friday night that some of the larger jurisdictions and cities were complaining that to meet the variance criteria, they had all these cases and it was very hard. And I was going, well, take a look at Okanagan County. If we got 30 cases and we got 2 deaths and this many positive cases, how does that skew things for us as well? Because it doesn't take but one case.
What I can tell you is the new cases that we have did not originate here.
Well, that's good news and bad news.
And the other thing too is that out of 26 cases, how many actually are on the reservation?
All but I think one is recovered. So because they were Okanagan County residents, they get counted here. Although I don't know how we would reconnoiter that with the state, but 2 moved back to where they originally lived, out of county. So when we prepare our variants, we will, even though they still count as our case count, we will.
Why would it make a difference?
Final document.
Well, you're supposed to have 3 weeks of no new cases
Right.
to be eligible for it.
But not necessarily true.
Well, no, the reason I say that,
Of course, you just asked me a question, and I can respond.
okay,
Okay, so Okanagan County, let's say we have 0 cases, let's say Chelan County, they keep going up and up and up and up, right? So we could apply for a variance and they couldn't. Okay, now the odd thing that I find is that the tribal government, and even though I know they're following the Northwest, what is it?
They're aligning with the governor.
They're aligning with the governor, right? But they can say, hey, we're opening back up. They could at any point in time, right?
They could.
That is their sovereign right. And so I guess it's not, all it is just saying that there are so many differences, just like what you said, in case counts and you know, deaths and things like that, that
So
I appreciate the fact that
can I tell you the reason I asked the question? It's because my district is the reservation. Geographically, mostly it's the reservation. And there's non-Indians and Indians alike, and the Indians are as much a citizen as this county is any. And so to start, I know it's difficult, but to start separating those things, well, when it's convenient and when it's not convenient, is not a good thing to do as far as I'm concerned. So if we got health working with the tribes, we recognize that there's a lot of fee land on the reservation and there's non-Indians that live there, and we've got to deal with that. So that county line is drawn
Right.
on these maps around this room, and I include all in our concern. How we deal with that.
I didn't say I wasn't concerned about it.
No, I didn't say you weren't either. I said it doesn't really matter.
Right, so they still count as our case count, but when it comes to looking at the variance, we can look at who's moved away. For example, we have 2 other cases that are Okanagan County residents that we didn't count because one lived in Tennessee and one lived somewhere in Georgia, I think. And so even though that's why we're going back and forth with the state with our electronic data.
I think another real important thing is that we don't take classes of people and just start segregating them out, and then blaming those classes of people. We own our troubles in this county. We own them, and so I don't care.
That's not what you thought. The statement that I just made was.
What?
Was that I was singling people out.
I'm just warning that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're doing that.
Okay. All I'm talking about is the simplistic portion of numbers.
I understand what you're saying. So you said that all you were talking about was the numbers, right? Okay. And I'm talking about something a little different, and I want to say that I'm saying, let's be careful. I understand that you said it has nothing to do with that, but there's a few people out there that it does have something to do with that. And so like everything else that we talk about, when we talk about the National Guard and a variety of things that people misinterpret, as you know, we have to be careful with that. Because I don't want, again, we own our own lives.
I just said what I said.
Yep.
Because I want to make sure that I am explicit with what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And that is numbers. If
I acknowledge what you're talking about.
So, just in closing, we are working towards a safe reopening for business. We'll reevaluate this afternoon. You'll have, the Board of Health will have an opportunity to discuss this tomorrow and what that looks like. Dr. McCarthy will have an opportunity to, when he's ready to do that. And we'll have all our ducks in a row. Like I said, what I'd like to do is also, if you could think of, I'd like to get a letter from the sheriff and maybe the police chief of OMAC, Brewster, as other counties have presented a full documentation of, hey, we're supportive, we're ready to move into phase 2, that sort of thing. So let me help you in any way I can.
Thank you.
And I think that you got our backing in that, right?
Tomorrow, are we gonna meet at the board of, or are we gonna Zoom?
Oh, I see.
There is a Zoom link.
I'm just asking that question,
Yeah,
whether or not.
we have capacity for maybe 8 with the social distancing, so you're more than welcome to come. I know Dr. McCarthy will be here in person, and so that will be,
Is there a problem with having that meeting here? Or is it just too late to do that?
it's probably too late.
Okay, because we just have so much more room here. The other question I have then is, and I don't know if you were gonna address this today, but I think that, you know, you guys have had some communications from the Meadow Valley especially about certain businesses that are closed, and there's a lot of confusion that's been created there. And, that's a problem, and some of the confusion maybe I choose to be confused, so it makes it easier for me to open my business, which I could see that. And then just, in fact, the messaging that goes out. So all from Thursday on, I'm sure, maybe you are, I'm sure you are though, it's getting the communication that people are confused about what happened. And I also even had from the Tourism Council, which really includes Economic Alliance, the question that everybody's asking, and they're saying it across the state, that Okanagan County opened its doors
By doing what?
for traveling.
By doing what?
Well, that's the interesting answer, of course. The message is that they got this in their mind since we voted not to renew or extend the order, that they got that message that went around and said they opened the county. And I have commissioners calling me up going, so how did you guys do that? I go, well, how would you think we did that? Because that's pretty darn hard to do. We don't have the doorknob to open the door. And so that has caused some businesses to open. And then the other thing that's going on, and I need clarification for this because I'm pretty sure I got it right, is that, you know, you got an email from accommodation, tourist accommodation, says we're closed, but we go to town and they seem to be open in town. Are they different or under a different rule limits? And the fact is that the health district, the health, Board of Health has that jurisdiction in and out of the cities. That communication isn't clear, I guess, but a lot of that is coming from there. So we got people that are open and people that are taking reservations. I understand that some Mountain Lodge is taking
But they're
reservations.
still under the governor's order.
Exactly, and that's the message I send back. I reply, and so that's the
Lori, did you ever find out on Jane Pierce and Snohomish if the county commissioners or council had done a resolution to close hotels?
I can't
Yep, that's the
speak for King, Snohomish, and Pierce. I know they did in, several counties, including Chelan. The commissioners in Chelan County were very concerned about Chelan itself, the city of.
In the very beginning, Jim, that was earlier on.
Yeah, but I think, I'm not sure, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure where they are at this point either.
At this moment, I know that they're continuing to get cases down there.
I guess
So,
I can say one thing, okay? Fishing season opened up, and guess what?
yeah, I can
I mean, I've
imagine.
lived there all my life, I know
Right.
most, I mean, I can tell, I don't know everybody, right? But I mean, I can tell when somebody's not from there.
you can tell that here too, by the way. Highway 97 is like,
Yeah,
it's happening.
You guys are from here, so you would know that.
Well, it goes now, not too.
So it's, we got this thing with the highway, right? There's guys that there's logging activity right now that needs to get logs over the dirt. And people are like, well, don't open the highway up. I'm like, no, we can't do that.
You
We
have to.
cannot not open that highway up because there is and I really wanted, I kept my calm because I was thinking about the run-on toilet paper and what toilet paper is made from. It's made from love, right?
Which don't get me started on now.
So anyway, I said, no, we have to get the highway open. It's got to be open for travel because there are essential things that are coming and going. Now, if the governor over there on this side, that side of the state, wants to put some checkpoints in over in those counties over there, by all means, call him up and say, hey, we think that you should do that. But over here, we can't do that. We do not have the resources to do that.
And we would, while as much as I would like to instill common sense and personal responsibility on the citizens of Okanagan County, I can't. It's not my time to wave my magic wand. I wish I could. I think we would serve our citizens well if we had a unified voice and if we encouraged opening in a safe manner.
We got a lot of people out there that want to
There are
do
a lot
that.
of people though that
They just don't make as much noise.
like I said, lost their shorts and then some. Do I believe that we'll recover? Absolutely. I really do. I would like to hope so, because I think we are resilient, but it's gonna take everyone being on the same page and not just,
So right now, we're in phase one,
we
which
are in
means
phase
that
one, we are looking at moving into phase two.
auto dealerships or the RV dealerships can be open. All retail business can be open for curbside delivery.
So that's the other part of it is that, what I commonly get is, and from you even, no, I think Ronnie sent me the last one, but look at the governor's website and look, and you know what? That's one of the biggest things.
Walking.
They have you running around in a circle there that doesn't give you the answers. What's on phase one?
Yeah, I know.
I agree.
And
I have to type in Washington State phases.
yeah.
And you get that little chart there that
Yeah.
Nick's got.
I know.
Read
Pet
down
walkers.
it. Yeah, pet walkers are okay.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
You know how bad I need a haircut?
Yep.
I mean, come on.
Yes, I do.
Well, I just cut my own. Doesn't it look?
I believe that
I
we
tell you, I'm
can
working on
reopen
it.
things
I just-
safely.
I don't believe that I need to cut my own hair
Right.
because of this.
One thing that came clear that, to me just the other day is, especially by the end of Friday night, because remember I was telling you I was using that little Red Ryder to shoot these beer cans off my fence, and I've been pretty good now at it. But that was going into the evening. But one thing that really made me think was that there was this effort to open up golfing, and for me, I've never really been a golfer, right? Terrible at it, and
I
probably
mean, it's like baseball on the ground.
and so I went, well, what's with that? I mean, these guys want to have golfing. There's a lot of things out there that I'm really concerned about, and they want to have golf. And then fishing season opened, and then I got to thinking about it really. And I have a little video of my fishing pole out there at Leader Lake in the evening, and I went, man, relief. It was calming. It's a calming experience. So everybody's looking for that.
My brother and I drove to Idaho Saturday and Sunday to golf.
Golfing's open here, though.
But my point is it's a form of relief, and without that, I think that, it's a good point. I worried about it because, of course, of the opening, and then, okay. I mean, I have relatives, or not relatives, my wife's relatives, that call up and say, we're at a private campground. And I go, oh, well, if they're not public campgrounds, then they're all pretty much private, but did they open private campgrounds?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't.
If you read the resolution the Forest Service put out,
Yeah.
they're locking down the pay-to-play
Yeah.
campgrounds and the restrooms.
Yeah.
Any of that other, you can pull in a little turnout or whatever and camp.
Oh, right. No, I was thinking about the privates, because you know, if I have a campground that I rent out spaces at.
Oh, I got it.
Right. And so people interpret it that way, and they go, oh, okay, private campgrounds are open. Or, you know, you're talking about just pull in and on Forest Service. I don't think that's from DNR.
DNR's safe.
I just know from the beginning of this, and Lori knows it too, because she gets the calls that I get, and I forward her the emails and stuff like that. From the very beginning, people have been concerned and worried about the number of people that come into the meth hall. I mean, and there's been lots of people coming in throughout the whole thing. And yet we only got 5 cases. And so the data, I guess, do we want to flood people like on 49ers Day, coming over here in constant traffic? No, I don't think that's good right now. But I have a hard time reconciling numbers versus what we're looking at as far as.
But what I can tell you about the meth house is I believe there were a lot more people who have already had COVID-19 in the meth house than the numbers reflect.
Okay, and so we weren't locked down then.
Correct. What I don't want this to turn into, and it has, obviously public health turned into the villain.
Yep.
I don't believe that should be the case. When you look at our mission, is to protect the public's health. That's what we've been tasked to do, whether it was bad water, looking at those vector-borne diseases back in the 20s and 30s that wiped people out. Look at polio. Look at measles. Those kind of things killed, sterilized, blinded, you name it. That's what happened. We've come a long way, and yet we haven't. In the 80 years, 90 years since that took place, are we better off? I believe so. Do we have technology on our side? I believe so. We have ways of notifying people and communicating with people, whereas in unprecedented ways that we never had back then, when you had to nail a sign on somebody's door saying quarantine.
So, Larry, what if there was a way to, and this is a communication thing, it's a message thing, right? So, people are coming in from the Met House, from the other side and coming into the Met House, and the way we collect our numbers is not a very accurate, it's what we have. That's what we have to live with. So it's not always reflective of what's going on, and maybe that's good for us at this point in our argument. But if there was a way to get information to people in the Met House that were coming in, and people there, that, again, I sent you that thing, but, just the information that was included there on public restrooms.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and it's just amazing to me to look at that and go, oh, I never even thought of that. Avoid public restrooms. And so self-contained RVs that don't have to rely on public restrooms, that's, a piece of information. But the other piece maybe is that, it's almost a message, you don't have to say this, but so you're here. It's not really opened up here, honestly, when it comes to the hospitality industry. But you're here. And here's some things that you might want to think about to protect yourself and the people that live here. And just that information alone I don't know where you'd put it because we don't want to pass paper around.
Well, you've got
The DOT, I think the cities were asking DOT on the other side of Highway 20 to put a reader board on.
But this is a piece of, you haven't got the information, so it's a really important piece to look at because the actual effect of a variety of different things, and it comes in the form of droplets, makes you understand why people wear masks and all these things because, honestly, people are doing these things that they're told to do, but they don't really totally understand why. And I've always been a person, if I'm being told to do something or not to do something, I would, number one, want to know why. Because it makes it a little easier for me to swallow than to have somebody just say, you got to put this on or do this.
And you have to remember there's so much yet we don't know. This is, what are we, into May already? This is pretty dang new for us. What I do know is when a person not even 65 yet who went from working full-time wouldn't have more than likely passed away had he not gotten it, and spent 3 weeks fighting for his life and subsequently lost that. It affects that age group, my age group, differently than it does young kids. What I do know is that we've had 2 30-somethings in the hospital, one more than a week, who normally has no underlying health condition, and all of a sudden can't hold his oxygen because his lungs have been affected. These aren't made up. These are real, and whether it affects 1 or 100,000, they're still real, and they affect families. And so, what can we do to protect other people? If I'm a business owner and I want to get back to work because I'm about to go bankrupt, what I'm going to do is open my place of business very safely. I'm not going to allow the rush-in like I may normally have. I'm going to allow for distancing like we have. I'm not going to allow more than so many customers at one time. I'm going to require, hey, I'm wearing a mask, my employees are. You may not have to, but I'm going to offer sanitizer and those kind of things.
Hey, don't you guys listen to what the U.S. Surgeon General says?
Yes.
He said don't wear a mask.
I would disagree with that. I don't
He's the
think
Surgeon
that,
General.
I know,
You can disagree all you want, but
but what I know is, I'm not protecting, if I've got the sniffles and I'm not gonna get tested, I don't know if what I have isn't gonna affect you. And so if I'm gonna cough or sneeze, or even the air I breathe can have virus in it, I don't wanna get you sick. That's the last thing I wanna do. So I'm gonna wear even a cloth mask to protect you from me. You know what I mean? I mean.
I was at the Home Depot the other day, and there was a young man that went trotting through there, and all of a sudden he stopped and let out a big sneeze, clear across down all the way down the hall, and then started laughing and ran off because he knew what that meant, I think. And I went, right. And then so, I kind of discounted. I went, well, that's interesting. And then I started reading about how many droplets are expelled and where they stay. And you go to this store and you pick up everything. Everybody else has picked it up. I'm thumping the watermelons, all these things. And you got to think about that. And so they even say, people are saying, well, you're in your own household. You don't need to worry too much about disinfecting everything. But in fact, somebody comes home with the watermelon and the apples that everybody touched in the store, and maybe somebody sneezed on, and I don't put it past them. And then you put it down in your house, and then you move that stuff around, you have a pretty good chance of spreading it around your house. Those seem like, like for years. I saw a little funny joke the other day. I don't have to worry about this stuff. I grew up eating dirt, and so I'm immune to everything, Well, yeah, me too. I drink water out of creeks and didn't get sick, but it's a whole different deal. It's just a whole different thing.
what about people's mental health?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. I think that's.
I have my business partner. His parents live in Montana, so they went to Montana for Mother's Day. And he called last night, and he says, Sherry and I both went over there. We ate in a restaurant. We both got haircuts. We visited her mother, and he said, now we're headed back. They live in Kent. And he says, I feel like I'm driving into communist Russia. And he says, my wife is so depressed right now. It's unbelievable.
First of all, I think he's predisposed to that thinking. The second, I agree fully with you on the mental health issue. And in fact, I think they ought to put up a special fund for county commissioners and health officials. Because it is quite a stressful thing when everybody else's stress becomes yours. But I agree with that. And that's another argument that's made about the measures that we're taking. It's stressing people out, and they're not used to staying at home with each other. Kind of reminds me of the guy who was an equipment salesman for 30 years on the road. When he came home, his wife divorced him because they'd never had him. They'd never been together.
You know what? All I keep doing is channeling my grandfather, who was in World War I, and the sacrifices that those people made. And I'm sorry, we haven't asked too much of people for a couple of months. You know, I understand, if I had a business, I would feel totally different, I really would. But and those businesses have a right to open safely. We're not gonna require that people wear masks. It's your private business. But what I can tell you as a 60-something, I'm not going into a business unless they're taking precautions. That'll all work
That's
itself out.
I know, I send my wife in because I'm compromised,
Yes.
and my doctor told me not to wear masks.
Yeah, I mean, so we're not gonna stop people from opening their business, and people can choose to patron that business or not. We're not gonna require that. We want them to open safely. And those businesses that don't wanna follow any guidance they'll cater to a certain group. That's fine.
Well, and there's a good argument for the fact that.
Ronnie
Oh,
wants
yeah, that's right.
Ronnie wants to say something. Ronnie, go ahead.
Well, my comment was like 15 minutes ago, but we'll go back, bring you back in time to 15 minutes.
I apologize.
Hang in there, Ronnie.
I know. Everything that you guys are talking about is so important. One, I wanted to offer to Lori that we would definitely be at the Economic Alliance willing to write a letter of support from the Economic Development Association for the county. I just need to know when you would need that by, if you want me to do that.
She said by tomorrow.
By tomorrow, okay. And then the other thing I just wanted was going back to Chris, your comment regarding, people having to look for things. So for our area, I this morning went back through and I posted the PDF. So each business that has been approved through phase 1 has a PDF that's specific to their industry for Washington State on what is required for them to open their business. So I shared those by industry or by business on Facebook, and I'm going to post those on my share those and have a list on our Facebook page as well, so businesses can go directly there and click on that so that they don't have to search for those. I also shared just recently the national hotel industry and the restaurant industry, both like the retail did a couple weeks ago. They have just came out with the standards for opening their restaurants, opening hotels, and then the safety precautions for ongoing operations, and that just came out within the last week. So I did also post those to our Facebook page. I shared.
Right.
Yes.
Let me interrupt you for a moment there. So when you do that, you're making sure you point out that what phase we are in when you're giving that guidance? Because another one of those messaging things that's happened is if you get the guidance and it's still not open because we're working our way into that direction,
Yep.
then some businesses will take it as, here's the, go for it, here's the stuff.
Yeah, I did phase 1. I did phase 1, and then I made sure I put national, and then I put not for state, not necessarily state guidance in an asterisk on that. But all of the industries at the national level are coming out with recommendations for each of the industries as well. And then states can choose to adopt or not adopt all of those standards. But I think it's a good basis and guideline to start with. And then the states are customizing and really doing, last Friday I was on a meeting with the the Deputy Director of Commerce, and he said that they were working over the weekend and they were really pushing to get all of the guidance out for each industry. So they thought that by today or tomorrow that they would have all phase 2 business requirements and safety guidelines out, and then they would immediately start working on phase 3. And so I will definitely separate all of those when I put them on my website, and then I'll go back and make sure on the Facebook page that it's broken down too. I do know that this morning I did put phase 1 because it is very hard to, even I was going from one page to another page to try to get to those PDFs. And if you didn't know exactly what you were looking for, you would probably never find them. So I just want to make it as easy as I can for our businesses to be able to access that and be able to provide them with that information. We're also, I think I shared the last time I spoke with you all, that I went out and I kind of did this, blanket email, out to Okanagan County and to the mask making groups, just because, there are recommendations for the masks. And we wanted to make sure that businesses knew where they could go to access them in our county. And we want to, again, support buying local and purchasing products from our local businesses. And so I have a list on our Facebook page that has resources for businesses to be able to purchase those from our local people. So I just wanted to provide you with that brief update. I also wanted to just give you an update that we still are waiting for the Working Washington Small Business Emergency Grant that came out 3 weeks ago. We had over 118 applicants. The total request was over $1,020,000 from all of the businesses that applied. So obviously there was a huge need. And so what we're doing, the Economic Alliance, because that money still has not came out and we're still not expecting it to come out for another couple weeks, we are putting together a Okanagan County Small Business Emergency Grant, and we're partnering with TwistWorks up in the Met Hall just to get some funding out at the local level. The Economic Alliance had some money in our reserve account, and we took $15,000 and are starting that fund. And so we're gonna try to get out $1,500 grants. A lot of our small business right now, they're really worried about paying rent, or even having the supplies to be able to get the PPE or meet requirements that are going to be necessary in order for them to be able to start back up. So we want to make sure that they have some money, it's not a huge amount of money, but some money to be able to help them get ready to start back up again. So
Ronnie, there's donations available to be made to that thing?
Yep, exactly. I just put out the donation form, and Jen Tate's working on the website, and it should be up like any time. But I reached out to all the Chamber of Commerce's, the Long-Term Recovery Group, the Terrace Long-Term Recovery Group, and we've already started receiving commitments from those groups to help their business community.
So the other business there, Requip is the name of it? That's at the TwistWorks?
Equip.
I see Equip. They started one of their own where they take donations, and then they're making them for. I thought, is it for the medical community? Is it for the health officials? Jonathan. Well, they're making them right there. Yeah.
Yep, is a bag manufacturer, and when his business got shut down, he was one of them that went and did he was able to alter what he was doing and went into PPE masks, and so he did the GoFundMe, and they made tons of masks. And so he has been donating, and I actually just got an email this morning. I had reached out to him about 2 weeks ago, and he's like, I'm so sorry. He's been so overwhelmed with what he's been doing, and they've made a tremendous amount of masks and have been donating them to the medical community, to like the fire halls, to EMS, and so he's getting them out. He told me that he is also working and donating to the tribe as well.
Excellent. That's pretty creative stuff.
Mm-hmm. Before I leave, I just want to say, as you know, public health has been an advisory role. We've been working with you all along from this, and while we know it can be partisan, our position isn't, and we're just just trying to do the best that we can for the public's general health and safety. And so by providing that guidance, we wanna get the economy open again, of course we do. I mean, we're, loyal citizens of Okanagan County have been for a long time, and it's important that we do this with a unified voice. Unfortunately, it is an election year, but, we're not making it partisan. So,
You're doing your job.
keep that in mind. We protect everyone regardless of your political affiliation. And we aren't the ones that have turned this into a size thing. So, we're here, we wanna get the county open as quickly as possible before we, lose businesses. So, thank you.
Thank you for-
I will do
Yep. Keep the stress down, would you?
I'm good.
So discussion on, highway, what's going on there?
Well, DOT called me last week, said they're about a week out from, they should be open this week. They had to bring the howitzer up and shoot some avalanches.
Do you get called too, Jim?
Pardon?
Birchback calling you too? Is Birchback calling you as well? Oh, 'cause he called me too, I was just curious.
I think that he may have tried to call you, because I told him to make sure that he calls.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. So I did get, I got a letter from, or an email from Tesla that said, hey, we got some logging operations that are going on. Sales are in Barrington, and we're gonna start moving logs. I thought that our fuel from that house came from over there, and very little of it does. It comes from, Moses Lake, those places, but there is a lot of truck traffic that comes over from that direction. People are worried that as soon as you open the gate, people are gonna come over here. Well, people have the opportunity to come over there anyway because they can go around. It just takes an extra hour if you're over in,
Right.
wherever, Bellingham to, down around Monroe or something like that. So, I guess my point is that if the governor feels that people should be staying home, then he should be asking the counties on the other side to be controlling traffic coming out of it, instead of us having to control traffic coming into it.
So saying there's still another week.
It should be open by the end of this week.
Oh. What's that, the 15th?
Basically a month later than what it normally is. Usually it's open by fishing season, which I think is always the third weekend in April.
Did you have anything, Dave?
No, Andy, can you pass me that?
I just wanted to make sure that if we were talking about phase one, we're talking about that retail, curbside retail sales, that all retail businesses can be open right now, providing they do curbside. I want to make sure Dave was on the same page with his prosecutor's legal opinion on that, so that when I spoke, it wasn't without legal opinion about that.
Reading an article, it sounds like 5 counties have been given variances to phase 2. Saw that already.
Yeah, they talked about on the call. We get a call with the governor's office every Friday, and last one happened at 4:30 in the afternoon. Ran pretty late, but they, each of those counties are telling about their situation.
remember it says you do, and she said, not necessarily true, and started looking through papers and then anything else.
I haven't heard anything like that. Who said that?
Or,
Oh, I haven't seen anything like that, but
we'll find out.
Yeah, that's right.
She's blind.
yeah.
And,
Yeah. Well, that's the situation with the information that they put out. It's like anything else. Right now, everything's happening so fast, and then the plan comes out, and then the implementation of the plan, those details come out later as they work them out. But even with commerce, when we're getting dollars in from the feds and that kind of thing, where they're going to distribute them, like those agencies like Commerce is calling up like the Economic Alliance and saying, well, this money is intended for you, and then by the time it gets to you, it's a different story. So it's really, I always, reserve my comments in that regard.
yeah, because things change all the time.
Yeah, they do seem to be changing very quickly. But if they're recognizing the onerous part of any of that and actually changing that in response to what we're saying, all the better. I mean, it's like, because the biggest thing that's happening there is that people are observing, and I really, you think about Ferry County and those, they don't have those big stores. So here where we are, everybody's flocking to those places. There's lots of people there, and then the little businesses that.
Yeah, we're struggling anyway.
Yeah, and then they're like excluded from it. And so if you take those counties that don't have those big stores, very obviously the main one, they don't have any options. So, yeah.
Alrighty. Thanks for doing that. All right. And then we got something tomorrow at Public Health. Is that at 1:30?
So we have an executive session this afternoon.
Mm-hmm. We do. 2 o'clock. I don't think the date. Okay. Yeah.
No, it's both. Well, there is one question about that. The executive session says it's under items
F or G.
F or G. I don't think we ought to do that kind of thing. I think we ought to say it's F.
Oh.
Because I researched that.
We did under F last time.
Yeah. Because if it's, I don't know what the issue we're talking about is. You said F or G then too.
Because last time.
Well, last time we had it on and we canceled it, and Dave said it could fall under either one. So I put it under either one.
Yes. Right. So when
you go in, you'll
on that
say.
same topic with the Board of Health tomorrow.
I don't know why this one's on.
This is called by Lori Jones.
This one this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's because she's the subject of the complaint.
Well, Lori Jones can ask for a public meeting on it, but can she ask for an executive session? I didn't think she could be. Can you bring her in there?
If she wants to talk about something that actually came about and we discussed without her, I think she should, regardless, she should have that right to say, I want to talk to you in executive session because you didn't have me in there when you received the complaint. So, because it may be a little gray. I don't think it's all that gray myself, but that affording her the opportunity to talk to us about what the complaint was
In an executive session?
in the executive session.
Under F?
Well, here's the reason why. Here's the only reason why. Is because there is a complaint against a public officer.
Yeah.
That's her, right?
Yep.
And so, what's unclear about that is it says upon the complaint, and however you describe upon, that she, in my estimation, should have been consulted so that she could be there to hear the complaint against her.
You're getting that out of subsection F? Because when I read subsection F, I see 2 sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is you can have an executive session that the
On the
person
request.
that's being complained about has to be given an opportunity to, in addition to
Would
that,
you read the language?
have a hearing on it. Not a hearing, a public meeting on it.
You can have a hearing too, it says.
F says to receive and evaluate complaints or charges brought against a public officer or employee. However, upon the request of such officer or employee, a public hearing or a meeting open to the public shall be conducted upon such complaint or charge.
So what I see is that if there's a complaint and this is the way I'd read it if I was the person that was being complained about, and that's the way I think we should look at it, is that if there's a complaint against me, and there's going to be a conversation, then I should be able to be there when the complaint, and whether it be in a public meeting or in executive session. So the way this has been interpreted amongst people that I've worked with over the years has been, if in fact there's a complaint against that person, that upon receiving that complaint and talking about it, that person should have the opportunity to decide whether that meeting would be in executive session or out of executive session. But the implication I see in the executive session part of it is that they should be able to be there when the complaint is
Okay, so is that different than how we've always done it? Because I don't think we've done that in the past.
Well, I know, but the one concern I have about that is that, and I say this about a lot of different things, is that we do a lot of things over and over and over again, and it doesn't necessarily mean it was the right way to deal with it. The other thing that I always remember is this, is that, you know, if we don't see a case, and I learned this about in land use law, where this lady from Ogden, Murphy and Wallace, an attorney, talked to us, and she said, you don't want to do this because this is illegal. And I said, you know, we do that all the time around here. And she says, yeah, and I know that a lot of things that you do never see the light of day until they do. And so that is the premise I operate on. So when I look at that, I look at it in a little bit of caution.
I guess I know, I'm gonna.
And that's all I'll say about it.
Well, I can't figure out if a complaint or whatever, let's say somebody said, you know, there's a public employee and they're mean. Okay? Well, so don't we have the right to go into executive session and to actually look at that complaint and try to figure out its validity and how far we want to go with it? Okay, so then if we decide, okay, it's an invalid complaint. There is no basis for what this person has said, and we don't need to go any further with it. Okay, then nothing else happens. We go out of executive session. We have received the complaint and we have talked about it. Now, if we believe then that well, maybe this is a valid complaint, and maybe we should go a little bit further and bring the employee into this to start, a dialogue. Then at that point, then the employee has the right to either do it in executive session or do it in an open public meeting. I mean, that's how I look at it.
So I've looked at it that way too, because I look at things from about every angle I possibly can when I come up with these things. And I honestly do. I don't just jump on that stuff. And I thought about that myself. I thought, well, but then, you think about it, and it's just like somebody made a complaint, an allegation, and you're going to talk about it. And so when we decide whether or not it had any validity or anything, that person should, because it's against them and it was an interaction with them, should be able to be there and say, this is what happened there, and so you all decide.
Well, they can do this at a public meeting too. I mean, that's why they have to have, when I said I thought there was ambiguity in F, I didn't think there was ambiguity about whether or not you bring her into the executive session with you. That might be, maybe it's ambiguous too. I mean, it doesn't address it in there. I thought the ambiguity was whether you give them the opportunity of a public meeting before or after.
Actually, I understand, and there's some question. This isn't a personal thing because I'm no attorney and I don't even want to pretend to be. It's just the way I've always treated these kinds of things, and the reason is that it gives at least some reasonable doubt to that person that's being complained about, and it brings things into a conversation. The part where they decide whether they want to have that discussion in the public or in an executive session, to me, it's a hinge point right there. You're going to talk about this. We've received a complaint against you, and we were going to go into executive session. We would like to invite you into executive session. This is the way I see it going anyway. And then that person goes, no, I want to talk about it in public. And it's like, okay. And sometimes that's even for the person that's being complained against, that might be just something that because they don't want to go into executive session and see that complaint discussed, and then nothing happens because you can't do anything, and then they feel like that their trial is over. And so to me that gives, I try to look at the intent of the law. What we can do and what we can't do is one thing, and then where we interpret it is one thing, but giving that person, affording them the opportunity to be engaged in this complaint, I guess I just think
Well,
that's an important thing.
if you want, maybe see how others
Yeah.
around the state.
There is.
I know with the subsection I,
Yeah.
the reasoning for it is attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
And if you bring somebody in there, then you ruin it. And then what's the whole point?
Right.
So just like using reasoning to say, oh, well, maybe it would be beneficial in this way, you might end up.
Right, and I as the, litigation, potential litigation, yeah.
This one looked, it sounded to me like it might have been threats of litigation, so that's why I thought.
Yeah, I know.
We would, there weren't.
Well, not as far as I know.
I asked if there were, and it sounded like there were, that there was.
I don't, see, so, I don't know about that, because when we had the conversation, I didn't know anything about any litigation.
Yeah, I did. I talked with.
So they threatened to sue the county. The health. So then again, that would be something down there, and I can see what you might be talking about, but the complaint itself is what I think that is most important. And if it's a threat to litigation, I guess it's up to you to decide whether they can litigate.
If they get sued, then.
What would they get sued for?
Well, you have to ask that. It might be a frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah, well, I guess then everything that ever happens in a complaint would always be in potential litigation.
When I asked before, there was a
Question as far as,
Oh,
what was it?
well, all I know is that when I talked to the individual, he told me he was going to an attorney, so that
Yeah, and I don't know.
indicated to me
about
that
that either.
possible litigation.
Right.
Well, I guess the most important thing for me is that, again, for transparency in terms of executive session, is that we decide what it is, and we call it that, so that, because it's a little ambiguous when we tell the public we're going into executive session for some reason, and but we're not sure what it is. I don't know that.
We had a little bit of conversation on that with that before we went in under subsection F.
Yeah,
We did
I
talk
know.
about it.
I know, and it got down to the point where I went, "You're the attorney, tell us," because I got to listen to you no matter what. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to have a conversation with you, and it's not a personal thing. It has to do with,
Yeah, I'm not
okay, I'm glad.
offended or anything. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on because tomorrow it sounded like there was going to be another executive
Yes.
or a public meeting. And so I was a little confused. If we have one, we're going to have another here, then we're going to have
We
one
have,
there. And
so,
we're gonna,
Is it?
Dave, remember, we are the county commissioners, and we're also the Board of Health, or all members of the Board
and
of
that's
Health.
what I meant.
3 or 4, right?
Not the three of you having one tomorrow, but the entire Board of Health having one tomorrow.
Right.
Well, in all reality, it's, I think, an odd position because you have, Board of Health that is also a county, their county department. So I think that there has to be separation, just like when we separate when we go into,
Or EMS district.
EMS districts, right? We actually reconvene as an EMS district in order to pay bills, trying to keep things separated. So I just think there's a separation of things.
Well, the big separation with the Board of Health and us is that we are not the sole decision makers. So when we go into EMS and we take all these precautions, we are the sole decision makers. Over at Health, we're not.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is a big deal, really.
So she's coming back up here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we can,
All I saw was on the agenda.
I can find anything that talks about that. When I researched it before, that's not what I was researching.
I understand.
Whether it's before or after.
Yeah, and it's actually, if you look at some of the stuff that comes out at MRC, I think that Sullivan had something on that at one point, and it was how to avoid the pitfalls. And so some of them weren't you're good or you're wrong, you're bad, because that sometimes is usually after the fact. But how how to avoid them, and that is to act this way. And so, it's like when we have a decision to make under a zoning situation, which we don't make that many here, but when those kinds are made and there's some ambiguous language or something, there's guidance as to how you make your decision, and it has to do with the public benefit. So you lean that way, and that's the guidance. It's like, okay, I have to make a decision, and it's not real clear, so I'm going to make that decision in favor of the public good rather than some particular person, if it's unclear. So in this case, I'm just used to operating that way, and that is, I try to figure out why they made the law, and why would they offer somebody the opportunity to come in and say, I want it in public or not in public. Because again, until you've been in that situation or seen somebody in that situation, it doesn't come out very apparent. And
if I were to put myself in somebody's shoes and there was an accusation made against me, and the only way that I could talk about that accusation was in executive session, which is illegal to bring anything out of that executive session, I would want the opportunity then to, I think it was created because I want the opportunity to sit right there and challenge the fact that somebody is doing something. So or I don't want to be in the limelight, and I want to be able to say, hey, this is really what happened, without having to state it out in public. So I think it's a good way to.
I think it's a really good way to operate, and I don't know if make sure it's legal or not. It doesn't subject us to more liability, but that would be to go and say, when we get a complaint against an employee, we go to the employee and say, we've got a complaint against you, and we want to talk about it. Would you rather talk about it in an executive session or on the phone?
Right. But what if it doesn't?
I understand that's how you're interpreting it.
Yeah.
What if it doesn't rise?
I'll check into it.
What if it doesn't rise to the level of even going to the employee? I mean, look at the number of emails that I get that are, hey, this person was grumpy with me, or,
Do we have to go to executive session to talk about that?
But, and exactly, I guess there's levels at which you would, do things. Okay, so if I felt like, hey, this might actually, be something, I would call an executive session. I would go back and the three of us then would discuss.
If somebody was grumpy with me, and she took care of this once, somebody was grumpy with me, I would go, first thing, I go, we are in a very interesting situation, and she takes calls all day long, and she might have reacted that way. So, if you might just talk to her again. I went to her and said,
I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about in general.
okay.
I'm talking about in general employees.
Okay, well, I was just using that example. But
Chris, do you think it should be optional, whether or not the commissioners ask the employee if they want to join them for executive session, or do you think it should be?
I got an idea. Why don't we ask somebody who knows? If we don't know, if we're having questions about it, then why don't we just send a question to MRSC or somebody to say, hey, what's your interpretation?
That's a good one. You send a letter to MRS, or not a letter, you just go on the phone.
Send email or whatever.
Well, no, they have frequently asked questions. I think it's worth it.
After the process.
Yeah. And then, because they give you an opinion, you know what they do after they give you the opinion, of course?
What?
Tell you to go talk to your attorney about it.
I know.
And if I make that request, they got to contact you.
And I think that if Dave is saying, hey, you're covered, then I think that we're covered.
So, not a whole lot of time, but she's coming back at 1:30? At 2? Okay, we'll see what I can find out.
So, I'm going to do it right now. Okay, so there's, and we need to, when Lori comes back, if we could put on our agenda a discussion about the fairgrounds at large events, I got this gentleman from the gun show calling me to ask, hey, are you guys looking good, or blah, 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 you know? So I guess we need to have a discussion about some upcoming events, and if they're going to, you know, if we feel like we're gonna be in a phase where they're gonna happen, or whatever.
Got any ideas?
Do I have any ideas? I'm trying to look for the schedule.
That was a question, another question asked by other commissioners who, you know, was, what about our fair?
I'm telling everybody I'm moving forward like we're having a fair. Period. Yeah.
Will there be any, I guess the one, you know, maybe I'm a little overly cautious sometimes, I don't know, but the one concern I would have is that, if we do that and something happens, do we have a contingency?
Nope. It's too big of an event to have a contingency plan for that. And you can't show cows online from the kids, and it just.
So if this is a big if, because you're throwing your dice out.
That's right.
Well, we did that just recently with changing and putting a date on the end of our order, and it sent a message out that made people think that we were opening the county after the damn day went by. I don't think that was a good ending myself, because it's not over now. It's not over yet. So, I guess I can't predict the future that well, and so I always like to have something with contingency. And
yeah, I mean,
not even unless
we can't, you know, you never know if you're going to have a massive wildfire where it's so smoky that you can't have it there.
Unless we had 20 deaths the month before or something like that from COVID.
Yeah.
So we just say we're going forward with it.
Yep. Because when the fires happened, there was no.
So that's taking a stand, and you're saying no. If the governor decides that he's going to do something different, we're going to ignore that. So that's what the intent is.
No, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't, but that's what.
I'm not right now. I am not willing to cancel a fair for September.
I didn't say I wanted to cancel it.
Okay. The only way.
I was just asking you if you had a contingency.
The only right now is there would be a gathering of over 250 people.
Correct.
So that's in phase 4. Okay. So, do we have a contingency for fair? No, because there's no place in the state you can move the fair to. There's no place in the county you're going to move the fair to.
Well, that's one option.
Right. Okay. So, no, there is no contingency. But the thing is that if by September 4th, we're not in phase 4, there would be, I feel like that there would be a societal breakdown in the state of Washington at that point. So I'm moving forward with the notion that, or with the hope that we will have been socially distanced for long enough that we will have been practicing safe, sanitary things and stuff like that, and then we will be at phase 4 by September.
So when we shared that information with other counties on phone call, my response to that was, as far as I know, we're going forward with the fair, but we'll have to wait and see what happens as we get closer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was basically there was a contingency there. That was, we're planning it as though we're going to be successful.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Chris. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So, and then.
So I'm not saying that I'm not saying that oh yeah, if you know, like you said, if you have 20 deaths or something really horrible is going on, then things won't change. Because again, things could change every single year with different emergencies.
Right. This is a different kind of emergency. I'm just saying that, okay? This is a different kind because well, now I got my clarification anyway, is that, we're going forward with the fair.
No, wait a minute, no, also, okay. You asked me what my opinion was, right? Is that correct? Well, you just said we're going forward with fair. Okay, now, three people haven't voted on that, we haven't made a decision on that or anything.
Right.
Okay, so all I was giving you was my opinion and what I'm telling you.
Yeah, and I just asked you to get a contingency plan.
I'm telling you, we're going forward.
Okay.
There you go.
And I didn't say anything otherwise.
No, you didn't. Gun show. When is the gun show scheduled? That's first weekend in June. That one could be a little bit tough. Yeah. Sheriff's Posse is at the end of June. So the Sheriff's Posse does,
Those guys could do.
yeah, that's not an event, really. I mean, that's camp, so that would be like camping and then they're doing stuff. They're
Yeah.
they're doing stuff outside, aren't they?
Yeah.
We should get the sheriff down here to.
Yeah, they